Quilty is brought to you by Baby Lock Sewing and Long Arm Machines. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Aurifil. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Fairfield. Together, we can make beautiful things. Free Spirit. A new generation of creative and playful fabrics perfect for fashions, home decor, quilting, crafting, and more. Hovels Sewing. Cut it close with Hovels. Moda. Make something quilty with Moda fabrics. Thermoweb. Manufacturer of heat and bond adhesives and new luxe interfacings. Proudly made in the USA. Wow, that's this cup has been holding marking pencils and scissors for many years. I don't think I'll drink any more water out of that. Welcome to Quilty. I'm Mary Fons, and it's great to have you here. And today on the show, we're going to talk about legality, which maybe sounds a little dry, but I guarantee you it can be very scandalous. You know, when you buy a magazine like Quilty, or you watch this show, or you download a pattern, or you buy a book, there are quilt patterns that you want to make. That's the whole point of publishing a quilt pattern in a book or a magazine. These patterns that we run are meant to be made. We want you to make these quilts. But we get asked the question a lot, and this episode is actually a fantastic episode that somebody requested, Valerie Calloway, so thanks for suggesting that we do a show on this. People ask, well, when do I know if I make a quilt and I change a couple things, is it my design then? Or what if I make a quilt and I change all the colors but not the layout? Like, is that still theirs? Can I take credit for it? It's a pretty nebulous area in terms of quilting, because in quilting we have a lot of public domain material, okay? Literally. No, but we have public domain quilt blocks, like all over the place. I mean, this quilt block is one that I saw in an antique book, this this awesome little Z, and so I'm making a quilt out of this. I don't have the rights to use this block because there are no rights to get. It's just half square triangles, so it's mine. I don't have to ask for permission. It's not copyrighted. Same thing with this. This is a Cracker Jack block that we used on the show forever ago. These blocks are good to teach with, so we hang on to them sometimes. This isn't ancient block. I mean, it's a really old-fashioned block here, the Cracker Jack. You put four together, it looks like that. No copyright. Somebody did it before you. Sorry to break it to you, but somebody else did it. And this pattern is from a quilt that I did called Memories, and I lost this quilt block for a long time, several of them. But this is a pretty intricate block, but it's still not copyrighted. I didn't use, or did I find that in a book? Well, that's the point. So here's the deal. If you get a quilt out of a magazine or a book, and it has a designer's name on it, you can make up that quilt and you can put it in a quilt show. But you should be nice. The right thing to do is to put on the placard, made by Susie Quilter, designed by Mary Fons, quilted by, if it's not you, certainly the name of your long armor, okay? So that's the right thing to do. And all of this, it's just the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done to you. Did you design a quilt? Yes, I designed a quilt. Okay, would you want someone to put your name on it if they entered it into a show? Yeah, you would. Do you get any money for it if they put it in a show? No, you don't. You're putting it out there into the world for them to make. You can also sell that quilt at your Christmas Guild Bazaar. Totally fine. If you make a quilt, let's get an example. If you make a quilt, let's say you make, I'm going to use that as a different example. I've got these little things. Okay, perfect. Say you make this quilt, Circus Circus by Lori Matthews. Adorable. You make this quilt with the exact fabrics, exactly how Lori made it in this issue of Quilty. You can sell that quilt at a local fair or at a bazaar, a guild bazaar. The problem comes if you make up 10 of them and start selling them on eBay. That's not okay. Again, golden rule. You make a quilt, someone's making your quilt and selling it. And here's the thing too. Some people would be totally outraged and some people wouldn't care. It depends on the quilter, but that is the point, is that you need to ask. If you're ever in question, if you ever have a quilt in question, what can I do with this? Is this mine? You need to ask. Now, I asked my mom about this, and she said, there used to be this rule that if you change three things and it'll be your pattern. And that's not always, people have kind of gotten away from that because come up with your own design. And if you don't want to come up with your own design, just credit the person, okay? Or do your own thing. Now, one other point about this is that this is a very basic quilt. It is circles on squares. So I think Lori would agree with me that there's a lot you can do with this quilt before you need to ask her for permission. It's just a very, very simple thing. Same thing with, I got to get to Tree Everlasting here because this is a very good example. Tree Everlasting, that is one of the oldest quilt patterns ever. I mean, this is old, hundreds of years old, this pattern. Nancy McNally, she made her own version. So it is kind of nebulous. Okay, so you're getting the idea. Now, one thing I have to mention is that what makes this quilt really spectacular is the quilting on it. You got to talk about the long armors when you're talking about copyright, because you have somebody's making the piecing and the pretty stuff that you see from far away, but the quilting is intricate and amazing. And these long armors are creating their own pantographs and like doing their own stuff. They rarely get credit at all for coming up with their own like dove design. They just like this amazing dove repeat that they're doing, or this, butterfly repeat, and people rip that off all the time. It's really, we're going to see more like what's going to happen with all of this, I think, as the internet age matures, because boy, it's really easy to copy a pattern off the internet and download it and, call it yours. I have some notes here. I just want to make sure I come with all of this for you because it's all really good. And thanks to Marianne Fons, my mom, for just throwing in a few thoughts. Yeah, she says the best piece of advice that she can give anybody who wants to do an original quilt, like I want to design an original quilt, but how do I know if it's mine? I might be ripping somebody off without even knowing it. Go to this book, The Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Patterns. It's by Barbara Brackman. It is a bit of a Bible in the quilt world. She drew all the blocks. All of the blocks. Barbara Brackman is a scholar and a quilt educator. She's a legend, and she made the Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Patterns, and every block that's really ever been made is in that book. And if you want to design a quilt, be like, flip, 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 close your eyes and point to something, and just kind of go from there and start putting blocks together, start taking pieces out of a block. You know what I mean? Start with an original thought, and then nobody can say you ripped them off because you didn't. We're all inspired by what we see, and we all want to make quilts that we see in books and magazines, and that's great. Credit where credit is due is really important. If you ever have a question about what's right or wrong, ask the maker. Try to get in contact with them. And copyright law is really nasty and gross. You don't have to go there. You shouldn't have to go there. But just be aware, and treat others with respect for their work. And the last thing I'll say, won't be in a soapbox, but for a long time, quilts didn't get a lot of credit for being artwork or for being worth protecting. If you have a design that is yours and you really, you think somebody's misusing it, you need tell them, because that's the other side of this is, be nice and be good. But if somebody is using your work and not giving you credit for it, and you're quite sure it's yours and it's being misappropriated, then you can say something, and you should. So be nice to each other, and we'll all make more quilts, and that will be great. Click. See you next time. Quilty is brought to you by Baby Lock Sewing and Long Arm Machines. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Fairfield, together we can make beautiful things. Free Spirit, a new generation of creative and playful fabrics perfect for fashions, home decor, quilting, crafting, and more. Hovels Sewing, cut it close with Hovels. Moda, make something quilty with Moda fabrics. Thermoweb, manufacturer of heat and bond adhesives and new luxe interfacings, proudly made in the USA.